Why does the black man serve the white man? Why does everything the black man do benefit the white man? Why does the black man say freedom is doing what I want to do? And why is it that everything he wants to do enriches the European?
Welcome to the desert of the real.
I don't know why we leaving Mouse's house. He been good to us. He feed us on Saturday, clothes us on Sunday, and then beat us on Monday. Or was it Tuesday? I don't know.
Jasper, I just wants to go. I was a house nigga, Jasper.
What?
Jasper, don't you want freedom? We going to Promised Land. The Promised Land.
Promised Land? Cleveland?
No, Jasper.
Baltimore?
No, Jasper, the Promised Land.
Oh, the Promised Land. Minnesota?
Peace, family. This is your brother, Mr. Holipsism, coming to you on a fine Sunday in New York. We finally hit the 60-degree mark, so I'm feeling good. Just wanted to talk about something. It's based on a call we had, me, Carla, and Thomas, and one of the callers called in, and he said, I'm not going back to Africa. I'm not gonna go. And he was like, and it made me think, like, do people out there actually think that we're trying to propose a reverse transatlantic slave trade, where we're gonna go, the BAIO is gonna go and get people and put them in chains and drag them back to Africa? Oh my God, that shit was funny to me. So I said, let me just make a video about this whole reluctance or resistance to going back to Africa. First of all, as if I even have to say this, no one is forcing Africa on you. You know what I'm saying? Africa is for nationalists. That's what people who are Pan-Africanists, nationalists, Afrikan Centered Progressives, people who have a more international and global worldview. You know what I'm saying? That's who are the main people who want to get on the continent. The people who want to get on the continent have a desire to get on the continent. If they're living here in America, most of the people I know, and I was speaking with Thorough about this, is that most people he knows and that I know have 5-year plans on how to get from America to Africa. You know, they've picked existing countries in Africa that they can go to, because right now we don't have a nation state. So I'm all for that. I have nothing against people going to an existing African country and setting up shop there. Actually, people are already doing it. So that's the number one thing, misconception, that, you know, people is talking about dragging people to Africa. I mean, oh my God. Nobody's forcing Africa on you. Trust me, you're safe. You can sit up in your mom's basement and scratch your nuts and watch TV and play, you know, PlayStation. You can do all the things that you're doing here in America. Nobody's going to stop you from doing it. We are not going to drag you out of your basement. Another thing is that basically nationalists are really in the same position with our people as the Jews who first started Israel were. We're not asking for every Jew, you know, like they weren't asking for every Jew to go down to Israel to establish the nation state. They just wanted the support of the Jewish community. They wanted Jews to actually be in support of a nation state. That's all. And we're in a similar position right now. Actually, there's an organization called the Israeli American Council, and this is one of the things that they say in their charter. This is their mission statement. It says to build an active and giving Israeli American community in order to strengthen the state of Israel, our next generation, and to provide a bridge to the Jewish American community. Isn't that the same thing we've been saying? I mean, I'm trying to really figure out what the radical difference is between what we're proposing and what that organization is stating. They're trying to build a bridge between the Jews in America and the Jews in Israel. Aren't we doing the same thing or trying to do the same thing? We establish that link between Africans here in America and Africans on the continent. But the only difference is we don't have our nation state. So that's the only real difference. But if we had our nation state, then it'd be exactly the same. Also, I want to address this thing about the white man being Thanos, Darkseid and Galactus all combined. They should call it. I mean, the movie shouldn't be about Ultron. It should be about the Avengers, the Age of the White Man, because the white man is taking on the same mythological proportions as Thanos and the Galactus and Darkseid and all the rest of these supervillains. Let me just bust that up right now. In America, you have Black American business people. In Africa, you have African industrialists. When you're a business person, basically you're selling products and services. You know what I'm saying? That's how you make your money, through products and services. If you're an industrialist, then you're usually making land deals. You're controlling resources. Industrialists' wealth increases, where when you're just a Black American business person, your wealth will top at a certain point and just basically either stay consistent or go down. Perfect example being Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson at one point was, I think he was worth at his highest $2 billion, I believe. Now Robert Johnson doesn't even make as much as P. Diddy. I think Robert Johnson is about worth 550 million right now in America. Which leads me to this segue. Aliko Dangote. Aliko Dangote is the richest man in Africa, black, white, purple, yellow, or green. He's the richest man, not the richest black man, not the richest African man, the richest man in Africa. He was at his highest around $25 billion. That was in 2014. Because of the drop in the oil, he's kind of went down. So I believe he's either like at 20 or he might even be at 18. But he's still the richest. But at this highest, he was at 25. In 2010, he was worth $2.1 billion. In 2010, he went from 2.1 billion in 2010 to 13.8 billion in 2011. And like I said, as high as 25 billion in 2014. He made his fortune in cement, sugar, and flour. In 2014, he announced a $9 billion deal in financing from a consortium of local and international lenders to construct a private oil refinery and fertilizer and petrochemical complex in the country. Now, this was before the drop in the oil, so he kind of took a hit on that, but he's still worth about $20 billion. So, I mean, how much is he really complaining? Then you got Mike Adenunga, another man from Nigeria. He's worth about $4 billion. And he doubled his wealth from $2 billion in 2011 to $4.3 billion in 2012. I mean, look at these. When I look at this stuff, I don't look so much at the overall amount of wealth they have. I look at the progression of wealth and how they were able to increase their wealth in a short period of time and stay consistent. Because as much as Aliko Dangote might have lost recently, he didn't go back down to 2.1 billion. He didn't do the Robert Johnson. You know what I'm saying? In 2003, he founded Globalcom. This is Mike Adenunga, which has more than 27 million subscribers in Nigeria, making it the second largest mobile phone network in the country after South African MTN, as in Nancy. It also serves customers in Ghana and the Republic of Benin. And then you got Theophilus Dunjama. This man went from 600 million in 2011 to 1.1 billion in 2014. He's a former Nigerian defense minister. He's the founder and owner of the South Atlantic Petroleum, um, a Nigerian upstream oil and gas exploration and production company. It owns about 15% stake in the Akpo deepwater oil field alongside operator Total and China's. Oil production in Akpo began in 2009. He also owns a stake in a chemical industry, um, a manufacturer of urea fertilizer, and as well he's a stakeholder in Now Comet, one of Nigeria's largest shipping companies. Shipping, another thing that goes with infrastructure. Oil deals, another thing that goes with infrastructure. And his net worth has risen, since last year due to more detailed information about his latest acquisitions and investments. Also, the richest black woman in the world is in Africa. Isabella dos Santos, she's worth 3.4 billion. In 2012, she had $500 million, and in 2013, she had 2 billion. She went from 500 million to 2 billion, and she got as high as 3.7 billion in 2014. Her assets in Angola include 25% of Unitel, the country's largest mobile phone network, and a stake in a bank, that's Banco BIC. In Portugal, she owns nearly 7% chunk of oil and gas from a gas firm called Galp Energia, alongside Portuguese billionaire Americo Amarin, and nearly 19% of Banco BPI, the country's fourth largest bank. She's also a controlling shareholder of Portuguese cable television and telecom firm NAS SGPS, formerly called Zan. And then we got the sister, I know I'm going to jack her name up, but Folarunshu Alakija. She's also from Nigeria. She went from 600 million in 2012 to 2.5 billion in 2013. And now she's worth about 2 billion because, like I said, oil went down, so everybody kind of took a hit on that. Her first company was an upscale fashion label that catered to Nigeria's elites, and that included the wife of the former military president Ibrahim Babangida, I think. Don't get me to lying. He was the president at that time, and what he did was he gave this sister this sister's company a prospecting license for one of the most lucrative oil fields in Nigeria. The only way you can do that is if you control the infrastructure. You know what I'm saying? So that right there, he wouldn't have never been able to do that if he didn't have control over the land. So how is the white man more powerful in Africa than he is in America? I'm kind of curious on that mode of thinking. I don't understand it. Now let's look at America. Oprah Winfrey, who's doing good. Oprah Winfrey is that shining star. She's the the diamond in the rough because she's worth about 3 billion, and that's as of 2015. But there's been no dramatic spikes in her wealth since about 2010. Like she's been consistently near the 3 billion, like she's about 2.8 to 3 billion, which is not, I should say 2.7. She went from 2.7 billion in 2011 to 3 billion in 2015. It hasn't been any huge dramatic spikes in her wealth. She got to a certain point and she stayed there for a number of years. And that's what I tend to look at. The wealth, the ability to increase your wealth in a market. Now behind her is Michael Jordan, and he's only worth $1 billion. So Michael Jordan, by all accounts, and this is coming from Forbes, unless they're wrong, he's the richest black man in America, and he's only worth $1 billion. Dr. Dre may have signed a multi-billion-dollar deal with Beats for Dre, but his net worth is only 780 million. P. Diddy's is about 700 million. Tiger Woods is 600 million. Bob Johnson, like I said, is 550 million. Jay-Z is 520 million. Magic Johnson is about 500 million. Beyonce is about 450 million. Tyler Perry is 400 million. Bill Cosby 380 million. You can take all of the combined wealth of those Americans. It's more than 10. I said the top 10, but you can add them all going down to Bill Cosby, and it still will not be more than Aliko Dangote. So being an industrialist is definitely seems to generate more wealth than just being a business person in America. So my question is, if you're about the business and it's all about economics and the business and da 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 da, then why aren't you going where the money is? Do you see how people were able to increase their wealth by being industrialists, by having some connection to land and infrastructure and having an actual nation? So if you're all about the money, why not go where the money is? What was that guy who said, they asked him, why did you rob a bank? He said, because that's where the money is. Well, if the money is in Africa, why are we sticking over here getting crumbs? Shouldn't we be having our nose over there? I mean, Aliko Dangote had at some point $25 billion. He's worth more than Mark Zuckerberg. Why aren't we trying to make some connections with that man? And he's a nationalist. He's all about empowering Nigeria and having Nigeria have control over their resources. This is what he's all about. So if you black, super black man, black power this and holding up the fist, wouldn't that be a guy that you want to touch? You don't want to have a connection with the richest man in Africa who happens to be a nationalist? I'm curious about that. Let's talk about Nigeria. Nigeria's economy. Nigeria is producing billionaires and on its way to overtaking South Africa as a continent, the number one industrialized modern nation in Africa. According to the Wealth Report in 2015, and this was compiled by Knight Frank with support from the Standard Bank Wealth and Investment, Nigeria will register immense economic growth over the next decade. It says, and this is a quote from the article, the market is evolving and we are foreseeing positive future growth in key African countries like Nigeria, which has one of the strongest forecast growth rates in high net worth individuals over the coming decade. Let me read that again. I didn't say that right. The market is evolving and we are foreseeing positive future growth in key African countries like Nigeria, which has one of the strongest forecast growth rates in high net worth individuals over the coming decade. That's a quote from Margaret Nemanger. I don't know. I'm bad with names. But she's the global chief executive of Standard Bank Wealth and Investment. So yeah, that's like what I said. If you're all about the money, then go where the money is. That's just common sense. And this is all, as my cousin would say, actual factuals. Now, some of us say we shouldn't go to Africa, which is a curious statement considering that the boat has already sailed on that. I mean, I'll just use one example. Blacks Without Borders is about African Americans, and you can look it up on YouTube. I think the full version of the documentary is there. It's about African Americans in the U.S. living the American dream in South Africa. There was one story in particular where a brother had purchased an entire building complex, I think, for $12,000. He was able to renovate it and now, renting out low-income housing. So he actually brought the building, was able to renovate it, and is actually providing housing for the native people in South Africa. That's just one story. There's multiple stories that I can give you. But the boat has already sailed on us going to Africa. So why we shouldn't go, or saying that we shouldn't go, first of all, who is in the position to tell black people that they can't go or that they shouldn't go? You know what I'm saying? If you want to go, go. And a lot of people have gone and they've done it. Now, this is something that I want to point out that the BAIO and African Centered Progressives and Nationalists feel that Black African power is a three-pronged attack. Now, number one for us, and the key thing, is we need a nation state. We need a base of operations that we control from the bottom to the top. This is non-negotiable. And I'm not really even willing to have that conversation with anybody, because if you are debating this or saying that we don't need to have this, you're not very educated on just world, and you're not really educated on geopolitics. That's all I can say. Until you read some more, do some more studying, do some more research, you really need to stay out of that conversation, because you're gonna get eaten alive by people who know this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And I try to stay out of subject matter that I don't know anything about. Like when it comes to Liberia, I know I have a cursory level of Nigeria. I don't have an in-depth level yet, but I'm reading my brother Carla Genesis' book, Journey to the Promised Land, and he's an expert on Liberia. Anytime somebody wants to talk shit about Liberia, I sick Carla on him, and he eats their ass up. Nobody's defeating this brother when it comes to knowledge of Liberia. So he's my he's my trump card when Negroes try to use Liberia as an escape hatch to justify not going to Africa. So if you want to battle him, good luck with that. So yeah, nation state is non-negotiable. Number two, we need Africans in America moving to existing African countries on the continent, and not just for vacation and retirement, but to be actively involved in the socioeconomic and political issues of the country that they are moving to or living in. So seeing you sipping on, some Mai Tais on in your villa in South Africa, I mean, hey, nice visual for you, but it doesn't really do nothing for the collective culture. If you're going to be over there, be involved in the politics, because we're going to need people on the continent in these different countries so we can form these connections ultimately for the ultimate goal of a global African people and a unified Africa. That's the ultimate long-term end game. The long-term end game is that. Actually going to the continent is the short-term goal. Let's get that straight. And lastly, we need direct trade between African entrepreneurs in America and the nation state in Africa. This will enable us to produce multimillionaires and billionaires exponentially, revitalize black neighborhoods into actual black African successful satellite communities, to actually have a community instead of a neighborhood where we just all exist. Now, none of these prongs are mutually exclusive. They can all happen at the same time. So there's a place for everybody to get in where they fit in. If you're about doing business in America, you're in prong 3. If you're about moving to an existing African country, you're in prong 2. If you're about forming the nation state, you're in prong 1. None of these things are in conflict with each other. So when people come out and say we shouldn't do this, or people say we shouldn't do that, then you're a fucking hater. Like my man Thoreau said. You're a hater. There's no possible explanation. How can you possibly have anything against a three-pronged attack to black empowerment when none of those things are in conflict with one another? And I'll even give you an example. Me and Neo-Black Nationalists. That's his name. Well, he changed his name on Facebook because he had some issues on Facebook. But Neo, me and him have met. He's in New York. And we went to the Harlem Brewery, and we also went to Mango Seed. Mango Seed is a restaurant over here in Flatbush that's near me. If you want to check them out online, go to mangoseed.com. The food is excellent. It's a black-owned restaurant, and it's one of the best restaurants in Brooklyn. And I happen to live near it, so I'm lucky. Harlem Brewery is a sister named Celeste Beatty who has a brewery in her home, and she actually makes beer. So what did we do? We went to Celeste. We went to Mango Seed and we hooked those companies up so that they can sell her beer. That's a big client for her. There's another client, another business called Serengeti Teas and Spices in Harlem that sells teas and coffee from the African continent. They import their teas and coffees all from Africa. Who do you think we're going to hook Mango Seed up with next? So we're not against doing business and making connections and networking here in America. So I'm really trying to understand, where is the resistance coming from exactly? Where is it coming from? Because the people that's involved in this process are all professionals and all motivated and all want to do the very things that we're talking about doing. Why do people think that we're taking what are we taking, crackheads? We taking high school dropouts and people who are on welfare and don't want to work, and every negative stereotype you can think of, and we're going to take them and ship them down to Africa and try to build something? So when you talk about bringing our dysfunction to Africa, who is we? Who are you talking about? Because that's not who we're dealing with. Also, and this is the last thing I'll get into. Nationhood means accountability. And this is something that the so-called black leaders, the charlatans, the internet personalities, and the conscious community superstars don't want, is accountability. They want you to rally around some vague abstraction based on the concept of blackness. You know, it doesn't have any real tangible, concrete thing attached to it. It's just vague and ambiguous. Afrikan Centered Progressives and Nationalists want a nation with a government and departments we control with a concrete and tangible concept based on land, infrastructure, and nationhood. Very simple. So do you want to go for the vague and the ambiguous? Or do you want to go for the tangible and the concrete? Now, if dysfunction in our community is innate, meaning that it's just hardwired into our being, that means that coming out of the womb, we are just innately dysfunctional, then what we need to do, if that's the case, if that's the truth, what we need to do is admit that we are inferior to white people and fall in line. Because if it's innate, there's nothing we can do about it. The discussions about power and stuff is laughable, because that means that under any circumstances, you will always be inferior to white people. So then admit that. Admit that you are and fall in line. Try to be the best person you can be under their power and their rule, because that's the only thing you can do at that point. But if our dysfunction is systemic and socialized, then it can be corrected in one generation. Amos Wilson did a study where he was talking about awakening the genius of black children, and he says in there that black children are more advanced than any race. African children, black children, that means Africans in the continent and black people and Africans here in America. Our children are more advanced in all levels of skills in terms of social, motor skills and coordination and talking and walking and doing all of the stuff. We advance further than any other children coming out of the womb. Where we start to fall behind is when we become socialized. Once we acknowledge our role and see that our role in society in this white supremacist construct kicks in to that little child's mentality, then that's when everything goes downhill. You got it? So that means there are either two options. There are two options for us for a black African future. We're either going to merge into invisibility with the dominant white society and drop all of your pseudo-cultural black power pretensions and assimilate into an American, which is what you should be. Or land, infrastructure, nationhood. That's it. Those are the two options. Either you are going to be an American, because you can't be a black power American. Sorry, it's not going to happen. You got to go the route that Common said. It's not going to happen. So either you want that, or you want land, infrastructure, and nationhood, and you want to have black people in power. You want to have a nation of your own, and you want to control the social, economic, and political context of your reality. That's it in a nutshell, people. So anybody have any comments, anything you want to put, leave it in the comment box, and I'll deal with it later. Anyway, y'all have a beautiful day. I'm gonna go out and get some sun. Talk to you good people later. Peace.